Hello, how's everybody doing? Can you believe it's 3 o'clock? I'm struggling. More caffeine. It's time for more caffeine. So you are in the session for Actionable Insights on AI. So if that's where you were hoping to be, congratulations, you have found the right location. And my name is Erin Walker. I'm the Director of Marketing Strategy and Enablement here at Clio. This is my 8th ClioCon, and I am also a self-professed nerd when it comes to AI. So afterward, if you want to come find me, I love to chat about this. You can find me in the AI lounge in the exhibit hall. But you didn't come here to talk to me. So in preparation for this talk, Damien and I were going through his slide deck, and I asked, how would you like to be introduced? And he told me in as few words as possible. And we really want to make sure that we've got enough time for Damien to take you through all of this amazing content. So with that, please welcome Damien, who is an experienced litigator and AI builder.
Great. Thanks, Erin. These are exciting times for anyone who is practicing law. Every time I'm in your spot, I'd say, why should I care about the person on stage? So these are my bona fides. I've been a lawyer since 2002. I clerked for Chief Judge Toussaint at the Minnesota Court of Appeals, as well as the Chief Judge of the Federal District Court. After that, I worked for a law firm, Robbins Kaplan, for about 15 years. As part of that work, I represented Best Buy in much of their commercial litigation. I also helped represent victims of Bernie Madoff, and I also helped sue J.P. Morgan over the mortgage-backed security crisis. So I did high-stakes bet-the-company litigation. I've also been a coder since 1985. This is me at age 10. And this is my Commodore 128 I used to be able to code BASIC back in the day. My mom loves this photo. So the number of lawyers that are also big law refugees, that are also judicial clerks, that are also technology people, there aren't a lot of people in this Venn diagram. I'm in the middle of it. In 2015, I pitched Thomson Reuters. I said, here's legal tech that I think can change the world. You should build it and hire me. And they were dumb enough to do that. So I spent a bunch of time with a bunch of people building a really big thing for them. I then left that cool job for another cool job in cybersecurity, where the biggest thing I did was that Facebook hired me and my company to investigate Cambridge Analytica. So I spent a year of my life on Facebook's campus with Facebook's data scientists and my former FBI, CIA, NSA people that worked with me to figure out how bad guys use Facebook data. I did that 57 weeks in a row, Monday through Friday. The stuff we would do on Monday would make the New York Times and the Times of London by Friday. At the end of a 14-hour workday, I said to my buddy, hey, do you want to break music? He said, F yeah, let's break music, except he didn't say F yeah. So we've copyrighted 471 billion melodies. The way we did that is through brute force. You can brute force a password by going AAA, AAB, AAC. We did that with music, where we went da-da-da-do, da-da-da-re, da-da-da-meen, da-da-da-fa, until we mathematically exhausted every melody that's ever been, and every melody that ever can be, to the tune of 471 billion melodies written to disk. Once they're written to disk, they're copyrighted under the Berne Convention. So I've copyrighted 471 billion melodies, and then placed everything in the public domain to protect You Stole My Melody lawsuit defendants. Before my talk, which has been seen 2 million times, every defendant has lost in those cases. After my talk, every defendant has used my arguments and has won. That is Katy Perry, Led Zeppelin for Stairway to Heaven, Ed Sheeran twice, once in the UK, once in the US. All of them argued what I argued, that maybe those melodies are unoriginal, therefore uncopyrightable. This guy thinks that I rock. My buddy says Elon Musk has horrible, horrible judgment in all areas. Except for this one. Maybe he got this one right. This is Jeff Hinton. He created backpropagation in the 1980s. He's the reason that we're all talking about neural nets right now. I was able to meet him in San Francisco a few months ago. These days, my day job is with VLEX. We have 1 billion legal documents. And you might know VLEX through Fastcase. Fastcase and VLEX merged last year. So we have 1 billion legal documents, cases, statutes, regulations, motions, briefs, pleadings, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And my job is probably the best job in legal tech, where I get to be able to have that as my playground, where I think about what are we going to extract from those billion documents, and what are we going to feed back in the form of large language model insights. And I also help lead a legal data standard called SALI, and it's an offshoot called SOLI, where we're tagging up all the things that matter to substantive law and the business of law. And those tags are being used, of course, by VLEX, but also by Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, iManage, NetDocuments. And so we're being used wide. Think of it like ISO for the law. So this is the Financial Times of London, who did a thing with my legal data standards work. So when people ask what I do, it's hard to be able to say what I do. I'm in the middle of this Venn diagram. The Minnesota State Bar Association, if you were at the people on stage right before me, they were talking about the Minnesota AI Sandbox, where they're saying if you are helping the 92% of legal needs that are unmet because we lawyers are too expensive, if you're in the sandbox helping those people, then you will not be prosecuted for the unauthorized practice of law. I'm leading up the AI Sandbox in Minnesota to be able to help the poorest of the poor that really we don't want to roll out of bed to be able to help. I'm also helping the American Bar Association with various thoughts on this, as well as bar associations around the country. This is the working group output. You know this guy? He appointed me chair along with the Department of Transportation as to whether we do or do not regulate autonomous vehicles. How much data are they throwing off? Does the government collect those? I'm helping help lead that effort as well. So in the past few weeks, I talk a lot about AI. In the past few weeks, I spoke to a massive amount of corporate people, a bunch of AmLaw, 20 firms in New York, Partner Retreat, the American Immigration Law Association. Shout out to Reed, who's out here in the audience. I spoke to the entire Minnesota federal judiciary, and then drove 4 hours to speak to the state judiciary. So I've, this year alone, been in 60 flights, 70 cities, 100 presentations, and I have 50 more to go. And here I am talking to you all. So thank you for having me here. Hey, thanks. We're here to talk about AI. What AI is matters, but it doesn't matter as much to you. What matters to you is that in December of 22, ChatGPT 3.5 beat 10% of humans on the bar exam, which is fine, but not nearly as impressive as 3 months later, ChatGPT 4 beat 90% of humans on the bar exam. And this is worth repeating. GPT 4 beat 90% of humans on the bar exam. And a lot of people say, well, that's fine because the practice of law is not the bar exam, and I agree with them. But how much of what we do every day and bill our clients for every day is way easier than the bar exam? So this is why we're talking about this. Human baseline is right here. So you can see over time, we've already blown past human baseline for reading comprehension, unanswerable questions, language understanding, predictive reasoning. And this is over time. GPT-2 in 2017 was about a preschooler. Then GPT-3 was an elementary schooler. GPT-4 beat 90% of humans on the bar exam. And o1, that just came out a bit ago, beat PhDs in physics. So the question over the next few years, where is each of you on this baseline? Where am I? This is the proverbial hockey stick that's going up. Just this week, I found out that they beat the 98th percentile of Mensa exams. So beating the smartest people as of September 12th of this year. This guy thinks that maybe the AI revolution can help the access to justice gap, that 92% of legal needs that are unmet because we're too expensive. And I agree with him on this point. I don't agree with him on many things, but I do agree with him on this, saying that maybe we can answer basic questions. Maybe they can welcome the mismatch between what we as lawyers can provide and what the needs are in the community. And a lot of these people in this room can help those needs. So we often think about AI as tools that solve problems, but we should think of them in that order. We should instead say, what are the problems we want to solve? And what are the tools that can solve those problems? And it turns out that AI is a really good way to be able to solve many tools. So I want AI to blank. What fits in the blank? That is a problem that maybe AI can solve. Often people are saying, maybe I put a Post-it note on my monitor saying, can AI help with this? So I want AI to blank. When I was a litigator, I would say, I want AI to create counterarguments and good facts. So I thought it'd be fun to take an actual case. This is a case where a bunch of coders have sued Microsoft and OpenAI over ChatGPT because the coders uploaded a bunch of code to GitHub, and then Microsoft ingested that code to create a tool called GitHub Copilot. And the coder said, wait, all of that is MIT licensed, so by ingesting the code, you actually breached our contract. Breach of contract lawsuit. So I thought it'd be fun to have ChatGPT argue against its owner. That is, I took OpenAI's motion to dismiss, and I uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, here's a list of counterarguments. I create a list of counterarguments, and it created this list saying, OpenAI argued that the plaintiffs, the coders, lack standing. ChatGPT said, no, the coders have concrete and particularized injuries that are linked to defendants' actions. It's a good argument. Then I followed up saying, for each of the claims, give me the elements of those claims. And they gave me the elements of claims, saying, well, for standing, you have to show that coders were injured, the defendants caused that injury, and a court can redress that injury. Those are the actual non-hallucinated elements of standing. Then I said, create some facts that could prove each of those elements for each of the claims. And here's the output, saying, well, you could argue that the platform was so widely used that it decreased the demand for the coding software. Injury in fact? Yes. Causation? Yes. Redressability? Yes. They said you could also argue that the coders lost a contract with a major client who opted to go with OpenAI's contract instead. Injury in fact? Yes. Causation? Yes. Redressability? Yes. Then I said, create a questionnaire that asks the client questions that, if true, can help the plaintiff coders win. And here's the output. Can you show me economic loss? Can you quantify it? Can you tell me about lost revenue, lost business opportunities? Can you give me documentation? Can you tell me a direct link between the dates that you lost that business and the dates that OpenAI's product came out? That would be great. Thanks. Everything I just showed you took me less than 1 minute. So the question is, how long would that have taken an associate? And if they charge so much an hour, maybe 8 hours, maybe 10 hours, how are you going to charge for 45 seconds worth of prompting? And what if you hypothetically had access to a billion legal documents? Every case, every motion, every brief, every pleading. And you don't have to be a prompt engineer. What if we bake this into the software? Hypothetically. We've talked about the death of the billable hour for a bunch of years, and so far that death has been greatly overstated. But if you saw Joshua Lennon's talk just a minute ago, the amount of flat fee cases has increased from maybe 10% to 20% to 30%. I think it's going to keep going until it reaches the 90% parity with what the big four accounting firms do. 90% of their work is flat fee, and only 10% of the most unknowable things are hourly. And maybe that's where we're going to reach parity with the big four accounting firms. Maybe hourly billing is not going to die, but it's just going to be greatly diminished, as the Clio Legal Trends report has been reporting. Note, everything I just did was extracting data from a public document. I did not put any confidential data into the system. That's worth repeating. I pulled from a public document. There's no confidentiality concerns in anything I just did right there. I also said, find logical inconsistencies. So that's what I would do as a litigator. So I said, take OpenAI's arguments and find logical flaws. I explain a bullet point where they're inconsistent. OpenAI argued, hey, you as coders don't have legal interest in restricting the study of making the code freely available. And ChatGPT said, well, that implies by making the code freely available, the coders relinquished their legal interest. But they didn't. They put terms and conditions, the MIT license. That is a good legal argument. Then I said, OpenAI said you failed to specify which OpenAI entity did what. And ChatGPT responded saying, well, these are collective actions from joint entities. We can specify further through discovery, but at this initial stage, this motion to dismiss is premature. That's a good legal argument. And this one still blows my mind. ChatGPT said you could argue that the injury, in fact, is the breach of contract itself to show standing. Because when the defendants breached the contract, it was at that point that I, as a coder, lost control over my code contributions. That is a great legal argument that I litigated for 15 years. I wish I could say that I would have thought of that, but I'm afraid to say that I would not have thought of that. In fact, it's such a good argument that I thought, is this hallucinated? Or is this actually based on cases, statutes, and regulations? So I went to the tool I'm building with Team VLEX, and I said, to show standing, can a breach of contract itself be the injury in fact? And it said, yeah, here's a case showing the breach of contract can be a concrete injury under Article 3. But then I followed up into the actual case itself, Patel, and it gave me 3 other cases saying, yeah, breach of contract can confer Article 3 standing. This is an ideation machine. And again, I'm pulling this from a public document. It came up not with this one idea, but dozens of ideas. This is just one of them. People that say ChatGPT isn't quite there yet, I think are doing it wrong. And they often say, I've asked a question and it hallucinated, so I'm going to stop. But the problem is they didn't ask question number 2, and question number 5, and question number 10. Think of this like a first-year associate where you need to kind of talk with it for a bit. So I said to the large language model, I really like your argument that the injury, in fact, is the breach of contract itself. Tell me more. Give me more information. And they said, well, actually, a lot of the code, the licenses require attribution. Like the MIT license says you need to attribute it to the original coder. And a lot of the licenses say that you can't use the code commercially. That's a good follow-up that I would not have known had I not asked question number 2, and question number 5, and question number 10. Try again. When I was in law school, one of my professors said, if you want to understand a statute, put it into if-then statements. If this thing happens, then this is the result. So I took a random statute, happens to be New York statute for falsifying business records. Maybe a former president might have been charged with it. And I said, put this into if-then statements. And it says, if someone falsifies business records and intends to commit or aid and conceal another crime, then Class E felony. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Look at the thing on the left and look at the thing on the right. 3 questions. Question number 1, which is easier for you as lawyers to understand? Question number 2, which is easier for your clients to understand? And number 3, which is easier for a computer to understand? Because computers work in if-then statements. So what if you hypothetically had access to 1 billion legal documents, every statute, every regulation, not just in the United States, but in 100 countries worldwide? And what if you were to think about running this prompt across every one of those statutes? This is on our way to computable law. Then I said, now argue Donald Trump violated this statute. And it says, if Donald Trump intentionally committed a false entry and intended to commit another crime like tax fraud or money laundering, or aid and conceal another crime like insider trading or bribery or maybe campaign finance violations, then Class E felony. This is an ideation machine. I'm a copyright lawyer, and my house is in Minnesota, so I said, when is Purple Rain going to be in the public domain? And I didn't just ask it out of the blue. You can see here that I put in the copyright statute relating to the duration of copyright. This is using what's called retrieval augmented generation. So I said, when is it going to reach the public domain? And it said, well, he died in 2016. The statute says life of the author plus 70 years, so 2016 plus 70 equals 2086, but it doesn't end there. The statute says it also goes to the end of the calendar year. So it's actually January 1 of 2087. That is the correct legal answer. So if I'm a client, option number 1 is to ask my friendly copyright lawyer. Option number 2 is to ask my friendly large language model-backed tool. That option 1 lawyer is never going to know why the phone didn't ring. Then I followed up by saying, how about What a Wonderful World? Nothing more than that. How about What a Wonderful World? And they said, well, that's actually co-songwriters, and under the statutes, co-songwriters of joint works go by the last surviving author plus 70 years. Last guy died in 2010, so 2010 plus 70 equals 2080, but again, it doesn't end there. It goes to 2081. That is the correct legal answer. A friend of mine's a privacy lawyer, and she said, well, this is fine, all of your legal research questions and that kind of thing, but it's never going to be able to do a privacy playbook for my California retailer clients. So we sat at my kitchen table, and I said, you represent a retailer, build a privacy playbook for California law. And this is the output. And she said, my God, these are all the things that I go through with my client on day 1. I say, why are you collecting data? Who is receiving it? Are you minimizing the data? Are you dealing with GDPR and CCPA in California? As a data subject, can I access my data? Can I delete it? Can I opt out? Non-disclosure. She said these are all the things that I would go through with my clients. I then followed up, question number 2, try again. Give me 3 examples of how a California retailer would implement each of those bullet points. And here's the output. Are you collecting names and addresses for loyalty programs? Are you collecting purchase history for marketing? Are you collecting web browsing data for personalized content? She said these are all things that I would go through with my retailers to see if they're doing these things. If you want to be able to take an interview, if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, and turn it into a complaint, this is an actual case where a girl got burned by a bunch of chicken McNuggets, but this is a fictitious interview of this girl. But I said, take this fictitious interview and turn it into a complaint. Put them into the fact and science claims. This is the output. And is it something I would file with the court right away? No way. But is it something that is better than a first-year associate, or maybe a fourth-year associate, or maybe a fifth-year associate can do? Yeah. Defendants had a history of serving excessively hot foods. Again, this is McDonald's. Immediate medical treatment, skin grafts. Here are the elements of negligence. Check it, get it out the door. If you're a jury consultant, I would be worried. Query voir dire questions for that OpenAI case. Hey, do you know of any coders in your family? Do you know about large language models? Explain your understanding. And then I followed up. Question 2 is saying, give me good answers and bad answers. A good answer is, hey, I don't know any coders. Good. Now I, as a plaintiff's lawyer, can impose upon you how important my client's coding is. A bad answer is, yeah, I work as a developer. Get that person off the jury, because they can say, hey, the code Damien's trying to protect, I did like first year in college. Get that person off the jury. Do you think individuals should have exclusive rights to their code? Good answer is, yeah, that you should protect their hard work. Bad answer is, nah, information should be free, man. Get that person off the jury. This is a cease and desist letter from a woman named Debbie Downer that's telling me to stop wishing her a happy birthday. I said, creative response is pleasant but firm. Tell her to chill out, but do it professionally. So it said, I acknowledge the receipt, accept my apologies. I didn't intend to harass or disturb you. I will respect your wishes, but we should resolve our disputes respectfully, professionally, amicably, with decorum and civility, more tempered manner. We should be more collaborative. Chill the F out, but respectfully. We create decision trees as lawyers, either explicitly or implicitly. So I said, create a decision tree on whether I should bring a breach of contract lawsuit. And it gave me the elements of a breach of contract claim. Was there a contract? Was it all those things? But look at number 6. Have you tried to negotiate? If not, you might want to do that. And look at number 9. Is the amount in dispute enough to justify my legal fees? Because I'm pretty expensive. This is not just the elements of a breach of contract claim. This is actually practical insights that the large language model knows out of the box. This is a Manhattan law firm, a massive firm whose name you know that I'm not going to say, that they're experimenting with taking witness testimony, translating that audio into text, and then saying, give me evidence that contradicts what that guy just said, and find it in the entire record. That is e-discovery, depositions, declarations, pleadings. This is real-time impeachment that they're experimenting with. So you can imagine saying, in the old world, when I worked for Robbins Kaplan, I would be taking the person on the stand, and if he said something that contradicted what he said in October, I'd have to whisper and say, I think he just contradicted his deposition. If I'm lucky, they find that contradiction, and if I'm lucky, they find it in time before he gets off the stand, but I'm probably not going to be lucky. But now I don't need that row of associates. Maybe I just have my friendly large language model put up a red flag with a snippet that contradicts it. This is not here today, but you can imagine it's not too far off. Create a chronology. I took the complaint and I said, put dates in the left column, facts in the middle column, and people on the, and here's who did what when. How many billable hours are spent by paralegals and associates saying who did what when? And we can do this all programmatically. People say, large language models only look to their training data. They don't actually go to a future thing that's never been analyzed before. And to them, I give this evidence of a future thing that a friend of mine works in-house. This question has never been asked before. She works in-house for an insurance company. And she said, do you know what effective computing is? I said, I'm a tech-savvy lawyer. I wish I knew what effective computing is, but I don't know what it is. So I went to my friendly large language model. I said, define effective computing, and it said, well, this is a way that computers recognize emotions through facial expressions, voice patterns, et cetera. Then I followed up, question 2, saying, and now tell me how it could be used in a call center from an insurer. That's how my friend's company was thinking about using it. And here's the output, saying, well, you could use it to recognize the emotions of your callers. How fast are they speaking? Are they emotional because of accidents or losses? Then I said, now give me a list of potential illegal issues that might result. And the large language model said, have you thought about privacy law, like GDPR and CCPA? Have you thought about whether that caller gave consent for you to analyze all of their emotions? Have you thought about data security? What if you get hacked and all of your customers' emotional data is in the hacker's hands? These are good legal issues that we're extracting from the public domain. I then said, expand upon each of those legal issues. Give me 5 or more sub-bullets of legal and factual considerations, and here are a bunch of sub-bullets. Think about where they're calling from. What are the types of data? Are you sharing third-party data, minimizing data, et cetera? These are all programmatic. And by the way, I would wager that nobody has ever asked about the legal issues related to effective computing. But because both of those things live somewhere in vector space, legal issues lives in vector space, and effective computing lives in vector space, what the model is doing is actually connecting that in what's called latent space. That is being able to say what legal issues apply to effective computing. And that's what you've seen on your screen right here. This is something that's never been asked before, but it's actually synthesizing these two concepts. What if you want to know what your odds are of winning this motion for this case type in this court? Maybe before this judge. Of course, try to do that with a large language model, and you're going to get hallucinations galore. But if you do that with our tool, you could say, well, in court, in the federal court, 54%. But in Minnesota, where we are now, 45%. But Susan Richard Nelson goes up to 56%. But trademark cases, about 1 in 3. Best Buy would ask me this question often. I would say pretty good or not bad. But if you're Best Buy, would you rather hear pretty good or not bad? Or before you spend $100,000 on a motion, do you want to know that your odds of winning that trademark motion are about 1 in 3? This is obviously better for Best Buy to know these numbers, but it's actually better for all the lawyers. Because if you don't know this number, if you say, Best Buy, I think our odds are pretty good. Let's go ahead and file the motion. And then let's spend the $100,000. And then if we lose, like we're probably going to lose, because 2/3 of the cases lose, Best Buy is going to think one of two things. Either going to think, A, Damien lied to me. It's not actually pretty good odds. He just wanted to screw me out of $100,000. That's option 1. That's a bad option. Option 2 is Damien was right. The odds were pretty good, and he lost. Therefore, Damien kind of sucks. These are two bad options, right? Wouldn't it be better to say, hey, look, odds are about 1 in 3, but let's give it a shot. Let's spend the $100,000. And then if we lose, like we're probably going to lose, because 2/3 of the cases lose, then we say, hey, we knew going in the odds were slim. This is a way you can build trust between you and your clients in a data-driven way. Not in an anecdata way, gut instinct way, but a true data-driven way. Now you can go from analytics mode to research mode to be able to say, I want Susan Richard Nelson to grant my motion for summary judgment. So we can go into all of her motions, say, I want to be able to see winning motions like mine for this case type, for this court, before this judge. And here are 151 cases where she granted summary judgment. Your Honor, just like the case you decided 6 months ago, just like the case you decided last month, just like the case you decided yesterday. This is a universal brief bank that allows you as solo smalls to compete with the biggest of the law firms. Because this isn't just a law firm brief bank, this is all the law firms' brief banks. So this is a way that you could be able to compete with the biggest law firms in the world and copy and paste from their hard work. By the way, no large language models were made in making these things. We've had this for years. 3 years? 4 years? And now, what if you were to say, now draft me a new motion for summary judgment that is statistically likely to win this claim in this court for this judge? That is, what if you were to take all of Susan Richard Nelson's motions that she's granted and take the text of those motions and put those into a large language model? Then be able to say, I want to be able to ingest that and say, give me a new motion for summary judgment statistically likely to win for this cause of action, for this motion type, for this judge. This is the reason I left the practice of law in 2015. In 2015, I said, this is probably going to be someday possible. Computers are really good at words. And here we are 9 years later, and this is within reach. What if you want to say, I want to create counterarguments for every single one of those arguments to prove these elements, for these facts? I want to extract all the times where this deponent seemed cagey. These are all things that are now possible. And what if you actually baked all of these things into legal software? So you don't have to be a prompt engineer. This is why I left the practice of law in 2015. It turns out that doing all these things is quite simple if you have the data set, the cases, the statutes, and the regulations. That is, you could be able to say, I want to take the New York Times case against Microsoft and OpenAI, extract all the claims, and the facts, and the parties, and I want to say, what are they looking for? Are they looking for money or an injunction? And then those are all extractive, but then let's go beyond extraction to ideation. What are legal defenses you can mount? What are questions I can ask my client to help them win? And then we give you research questions that are customized for this complaint. This is the New York Times suing Microsoft and OpenAI over copyright infringement. So it says, hey, maybe for copyright infringement, you want to be able to know about statutory and actual damages. We do this no prompting necessary. So here's copyright infringement. Here's the citations. It's not state law, it's federal law. Here's some facts. Here are the parties and witnesses for this. Here's now legal defenses. For copyright infringement, maybe you want to argue fair use. This is what fair use is. This is a legal argument saying that OpenAI was doing this for the purpose of training the models, and that's fundamentally different than the original publication. That is a good legal argument. AI-driven insights don't replicate the original journalistic function. These are good legal arguments, and we give you those good legal arguments for every single claim. What questions should you ask your client, OpenAI? Hey, Sam Altman, what was your training data? What were your sources? Did you get permission from the New York Times? These are all good questions. Again, no prompting necessary. So how long would it take to do this? I would say that this gives you about 200 pages worth of data, good analysis, done in 5 minutes. And so when I'm going to show you it in real life, not just demoware, but here's the actual analyze a complaint. So here's now, if we go here, let's go, this is about 200 pages worth of really good analyses. And so we sell to law firms, and you can imagine plaintiffs' firms are really thrilled about this, as you can imagine. Less thrilled are the hourly billing lawyers that see 200 hours worth of their work maybe shrunk down to nothing. But you know who's really thrilled about this is the Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 companies we sell to. They say, this is amazing, the in-house counsel tell me. They said that what we're going to do is 2 things, one looking backward and one looking forward. What they're going to do, they say, is first, we're going to take complaints that we received over the last year, and we're going to run those complaints through this. And then we're going to compare these 200 pages with what our lawyers did. And we're going to say, what did the lawyers add on top of these 200 pages, if anything? And if the answer is nothing, that's going to say something. And then they're going to say, what did these 200 pages have as insights that we wish our lawyers had told us? If the answer is a lot, that's going to say something too. That was looking backward. And then they say looking forward, what they're going to do is they're going to take new complaints they receive. And before they send those complaints to their external counsel, what they're going to do is they're going to run it through this. And then they're going to take the 200 pages, give it to external counsel. And they're going to say, what can you do on top of this? Because that's all we're going to pay you for. We're not going to pay you to recreate this 200-page wheel. This is a dramatic shift between the old world and the new world. Dramatic shift between the client-lawyer relationship. The in-house counsels that we've been talking with said, this totally flips the script of my relationship pre this tool. Because before this tool, I would get sued, and then I don't have 200 hours as an in-house counsel, so I'd have to give it to external counsel. They spend the 200 hours, and then they say, here's the plan, and I have to defer to them, because you spent the 200 hours, I didn't. So he said, this totally flips that script. He said, now, before I even send them the complaint, have the benefit of those 200 hours in really good analyses. And now, when I give that to them, and the lawyer says, here's the plan, and I can say, but that does not contradict page 137, where it says that that's a bad idea. And here are the cases showing why it's a bad idea. So this is the way the in-house counsel told me I don't have to defer to external counsel nearly as much as in the old world. You can do this not just for complaints, but you can also do this for contracts. You could be able to say, here's a merger agreement. Give me all the definitions. Give me overlaps. Give me language, client hostile language. Give me risk mitigations. Can you give me post-closing obligations? Give me fallback positions. These are all things, no prompting necessary. You simply upload a PDF, and we give you things, no prompting necessary. People have been using this for almost a year now. It's just not evenly distributed. So you can imagine those who are actually ahead of the game, and I would say that if you're attending the Clio Cloud conference, you're ahead of the game. You can make a lot more money than those who are not ahead of the game. So when we think about, there's an old joke about, not really a joke, but saying people don't want drills. They want the hole that the drill creates. And it's true. But the question is, why do we research? Is it for research's sake? No. It's always a means to an end. You always want to be able to take the facts, apply them to the law, to be able to create a document. Sometimes you file that document with a court. Sometimes you give it in a memo to the client. But sometimes it's a contract. But it's always a document. So it turns out that all the legal research that we had is really a drill. And it turns out that today we don't just build the whole, but we actually can start building the whole house, as I've showed you. Those 200 pages is the house. And now we edit the house and be able to refine the house. But editing and refining the house is a lot easier than it used to be. Every single thing a lawyer does involves words. Every task, whether you're a litigator or a transactional lawyer, you ingest words, you analyze words, and you output words. And it turns out large language models are able to do all three of those things at superhuman speed and at a postgraduate level. And this is the worst that technology will ever be. So every road that a legal task starts on ends in a document. Creating a document for the court, a document for the deposition outline, a document for the contract. It all ends in a document, and it turns out that the drill hole, you actually build a house. Those houses are able to build way faster. I'm going to give an anecdote, and then I'm going to talk about money. That is how you can actually make more money after this. The anecdote is the Bench and Bar of Minnesota asked me to speak, to write about ChatGPT. This is in March of 23. And I said, how long do you want it to be? And they said about 17 pages. I said, cool, I'm not going to do it. Because my rule of thumb is, in 25 years of writing things, it's about 1 hour per page that it takes me to write these things. So I don't have time. I'm traveling all over the world. But then I thought, wait, this is actually on ChatGPT. So what I did is what I did for every single article that I've written over the last 25 years, is that I created an outline that is 3 pages long. And that outline was multi-level bullets saying things like, what is a large language model? How do they work? Why do they matter to the law? So these are 3 pages of really good bullet points. And then I uploaded those 3 pages into the large language model saying, expand each bullet point into 1 or 2 sentences. And here's the output. And it's about 20 pages. Except the thing is, I didn't end at those 20 pages. I spent the next 3 hours adding, editing, revising, putting things in my voice, saying, oh, it's actually missing things here, it's doing things here. So this is not a robot author. This is a robot author collaborator, like I would with a co-author or an editor. And then I gave this to the editor, and the editor said, oh, cool, let's get it out the door. So to be clear, the editor sent me that email at 5 p.m., and at 8 p.m., I sent him that draft, and he said, let's get it out the door. This takes a 17-hour task, shrinks it to 3 hours. So by my math, that's about a 5x increase. So imagine if every single one of your tasks had a 5x increase, taking 17 hours tasks and shrink them to 3 hours, or maybe less than that. And think about if those were flat fees that you're making. If you shrink your cost, you increase your profit margin. But the real question is, who wrote my article? Because I didn't say, hey, ChatGPT, write me an article about ChatGPT and law. I started with 3 pages of really good outlines. And ChatGPT could not have come up with this outline. And you know why? Is because ChatGPT hasn't been a litigator for the last 20+ years. ChatGPT hasn't clerked for judges, hasn't been in legal tech for the last 10 years, and hasn't since November of 22, ChatGPT hasn't been thinking every waking hour about how the large language models are going to transform the law like I have. So arguably, ChatGPT couldn't have done that, and maybe none of you could have either. But the thing is, I asked for 1 version of this article. I could have just as well asked for 1,000 versions of the article, or 10,000 versions, or 1,000,000 versions. So the ideas, the outline, have near infinite expressions of those ideas. In copyright law, there's the idea-expression dichotomy. Ideas, the bullet points, those are the things that are valuable. But the expression of those ideas, I could have 1,000 versions of those ideas. I could have 1,000,000 versions of those ideas, and they'd be unique. And by the way, ideas are uncopyrightable. And the US Copyright Office has said that if a machine creates an expression, then that is also uncopyrightable. So you have uncopyrightability all the way through. So all of these judicial orders saying, if you use generative AI, you need to disclose it, I think these are not going to age very, very well. Because do I need to disclose spell check or Grammarly or any of the AI that we use in legal research tools? And when else do judges actually reach into your work product to say, hey, did you review the paralegal's work? Did you review the first-year associate's work? And the answer is no. And the reason it's no is because there's a thing called Rule 11. And what Rule 11 says is when I sign my signature under this, everything above my signature is true and correct. It's true and correct whether a paralegal did it, or whether a first-year associate did it, or whether a large language model did the first draft that I checked and validated. Ideas are the thing, not expressions. This is a cartoon that is both funny and profound, reflecting where we are today. Guy on the left says, look, I took a bullet point, turned it into an email, I pretend I wrote. And the recipient said, look, I took an email, and I turned it into a bullet point, I pretend I read. Funny, but profound. Because if it starts as a bullet point, and if it ends as a bullet point, what's the point of the email in the middle? There could be 1,000 versions of that email. There could be 1,000,000 versions of that email. The most important aspect is the ideas on both sides. Ideas matter. The expressions are becoming commodities. And by the way, there's uncopyrightable turtles all the way through. So let's hold off a little bit on business of law, how much you're going to make money. Let's talk about all the reasons people say, I don't want to do AI. Trustworthiness and hallucinations are one of the biggest reasons that barriers to adoptions. But I'm going to point people to this summarization, this is almost dead paper, where they said humans summarize this document, and then they had a machine summarize the document, mixed them up, gave them to human evaluators who didn't know which was which, and the human evaluator said that the humans hallucinated more than the machines. That is, they got the facts wrong more often than the machines did. And the date of this is September of 2023. This is the worst the technology will ever be. Here's a second study from April saying the same things. Human-generated summaries had a higher proportion of fabricated errors and more factual inconsistency than the machines. So the reason for this is because John Dean, when he testified at Watergate, this is the way human brains work. Because when he testified before he knew there were tapes, he got some things wrong. Who said what he got wrong, but what he got right was directionally what was said. And the reason for that is because psychiatrists have done studies, and it turns out that when we remember things, we don't actually pull it from a database. Every time we remember something, we actually reconstitute that memory. That's the reason the fish started this big, and then it becomes this big, and then it becomes this big, right? So the idea is that we're reconstituting that memory as we go forward. That's kind of what large language models do, is they're reconstituting that memory in the trillions of tokens that was ingested. So if you ask Noam Chomsky, one of the best linguists of the 20th century, ask him, remember that book that you read in 1960? Summarize it. Is he going to get things right? No, he's going to hallucinate all over the place, right? He's going to get facts wrong. He might get directionally what is right, but he's going to get a lot of the facts wrong. Now imagine asking Noam Chomsky, here's 2 pages of a book. Summarize it. He's going to get that totally right. And why is that? Because he has an open book test. He doesn't have to reconstitute that memory from a long time ago. So maybe you should do the same thing with the large language models. Don't just say out of the internet, tell me about Damien Reel and what kind of lawyer he is. It's going to hallucinate all over the place. But if you say, here's a biography, summarize that biography. Or here's a statute and the facts, integrate those facts into the statute, the hallucinations are going to be close to 0. That's what's called retrieval augmented generation. And it turns out if you use AI as a search engine, a large language model as a search engine, you're doing it wrong. You should do it to analyze content, upload documents, and reason with them. If you don't want it to lie, give it a closed book exam. Don't give it an open book exam. Just like humans don't do well with closed book exams, neither do machines. Give the machines the open book exam. Say, don't answer off the top of your head. Here's a page, find the answer. Here's a statute, find the answer. Here's a fact, find the answer. Here are a few documents using retrieval augmented generation. And this is our tool. 100% of the time, this case will be non-hallucinated. You know why? Because it's not created by a large language model. This is a database search, a database pull. So 100% of the time, this will be non-hallucinated. 100% of the time, this text will be non-hallucinated because, again, it was pulled from a database. The large language model didn't create this. Trust but verify is really the lingua franca of any of these tools, and every tool being built should have trust but verify as easy as you see right here, based on ground truth, actual cases, actual statutes, actual regulations. So, black boxes before we get to the business flaw. You're going to make more money, trust me. So people say, I don't know how large language models work. And a friend of mine's a nurse anesthetist, and she said something that terrifies me, probably is going to terrify you too. She said, Damien, do you realize we have no idea how anesthesia works? I said, wait, say that again? She said, yeah, it's one of two options. Either A, it does what everybody thinks it does, where we go to sleep, we don't feel the thing cutting into us, and then we wake up. That's thing number one. Or it could be that we feel every single cut, and the anesthesia makes us forget. We don't know which was which. It's terrifying to me, probably terrifying to you. But the real question is, do we use anesthesia? And the answer is yeah. Why do we use it? Because it works. Is it helpful? Yeah, it's really helpful. Then maybe if it works and if it's helpful, then maybe how it works matters way less. Maybe we should judge large language models in the same way that we judge anesthesia. Does it work, and is it helpful? My friend Daza is from MIT. He introduced me to an idea called duck test, also known as duck typing. And the idea with that is machine learning scientists, they know the inputs into the black box. They don't know what happens in the black box, and they know the outputs. And if that output looks like reasoning and quacks like reasoning, then maybe the question of whether it's actually reasoning in the box matters less. Because if I ask my friend and colleague Ed Walters, I don't know what's going on in his brain. I have no idea what's going on in his brain. But if what comes out of his mouth looks like reasoning, quacks like reasoning, then he's reasoning, even though we don't know how it works. And by the way, Ed Walters probably says the most brilliant things on the planet. So he's definitely reasoning. But I don't know how his brain works. And I also don't know how large language models work. But if what the output is looking like reason, maybe whether it's actually reasoning in the box matters less. All right, let's move to the business of law. How are we going to make more money? So the business of law is something that we should be thinking about. Business of law, and I'm going to get it back on there, 1 second. Business of law. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to duplicate the displays. And we should be back online right now. Keep the changes. All right. So when we think of the business of law, we should be thinking about what happens when we take it from the client's perspective. As a client, option one is to call a law firm partner. Ask them a question. They assign an associate. They churn for a couple of days, and bill is $5,000. How confident am I my lawyer? Pretty smart, so I'd say 95%. But option two is you don't call your lawyer. You just ask your friendly large language model back tool, like Vincent. It's not going to take 2 days. It's going to take 1 minute. It's not going to cost $5,000. It's going to cost pennies. And how confident am I in my tool? It beat 90% of humans on the bar exam. So the question is that 5% confidence ratio worth $5,000 and 2 days? And the thing is that option one lawyer is never going to know why the phone didn't ring. Clients hate telling lawyers why they didn't hire them. So they're not going to break it to that option one lawyer. I gave this talk in Manhattan, and a Manhattan lawyer said, I don't want $5,000 matters, Damien. I want $5 million matters. And I told him, I worked $5 million matters at Robbins Kaplan. Those are filled with $5,000 tasks, right? So what client is going to put up with you spending $5,000 on a task that they know Vincent and others can do in seconds? This is a study that was done last year where humans did 93% accuracy versus the machine's 95%. Humans 200 minutes versus the machine's 4 minutes versus less than a minute. And the cost per document was 76 versus $1.25 and somewhere as little as $2. So this is already a 300 times performance increase. And this is the worst that technology will ever be. It's only going to get better from here. So if you're a client, which are you going to choose? This is Harvard and Boston Consulting Group, where they said consultants, and by the way, what are lawyers but legal consultants? That's what we do. Did more tasks, they did them faster, and they did them with higher quality. There's another study showing better, faster, stronger with large language models. So where does this end? Well, it could end where the 1 to 4 ratio of partners to associates, maybe that shrinks to 1 to 3, to 1 to 2, to 1 to 1, to maybe just 1 partner, 1 matter. Maybe you fire all the associates. That's one path. And I hope we don't go down that path. A much better path is to say, maybe you keep all the associates, and they have their large language model associates underneath them. And then they could just do work faster, better, stronger, maybe with less oversight from the partner, because they know that they have the guardrails from the large language model associates. That's where I hope we go, because you can imagine if we go in this path number 2, you can make way more money, because you can go laterally and steal your competitors' work. And you can go down market to that 92% of legal needs that are unmet because we're currently too expensive. But with your large language model associates underneath you, maybe you can shrink the unit cost of that and make it less expensive. I'm going to skip over this one, and we're going to instead go to, there's an old joke that if you're billing by the hour, the slowest lawyer wins the race. That's because if you spend 10 hours on a thing that I spend 1 hour on, you make more money than I do. So lawyers hate efficiency, goes the joke, but that's only true for one type of lawyer, hourly lawyers. You know who it's not true for? Contingency fee lawyers, flat fee lawyers, subscription fee lawyers. You know who else it's not true for? Corporate law departments, in-house counsel. You know who else it's not true for? It's also not true for government. That is prosecutors, public defenders. So really only one kind of lawyer, the slowest lawyer wins the race. Everybody else has more work than they have time. So where does this end? If you listen to Joshua Lennon in the Legal Trends Report, where does this end? He sees a decrease in hourly and a massive increase in flat fees and subscription fees and contingency fees. Why? Because you can make more money. You show me the incentive, I'm going to show you the outcome, said Charlie Munger. You show me, if you're incentivized to bill more hours, you're going to get more hours. If you're incentivized to do more efficiency, shrink your time, you're going to get more efficiency. So if you think about hourly billing, you often think, how much money did I bring back last year, last quarter, or last day? But you don't often think about how much those things cost. Because any business person will say revenue minus cost equals profit margin in the middle. But if you jump over to the flat fee side, you realize, wait, I can use AI to totally shrink my cost. And as a result, I make way more money. In fact, I make so much more money that I could be able to say, hey, client, I'm going to give you a haircut. I'm going to charge you less than I would have charged you hourly. And the client says, wait. Not only do I pay less, but I also get the certainty of a flat fee. Sign me up. Or you could even say, if the client doesn't know what that number is, you could actually charge more money. And the certainty of the flat fee makes more sense. Why would anyone choose hourly in this world where a 200-hour task gets shrunk to 5 minutes? And then you're just negotiating with the other side, that is with the client, as to what that top line number is. And if you shrink your cost, then you increase your profit margin. I was a plaintiff's lawyer that did antitrust cases. And I would often sue over price fixing. And what would happen is a bunch of companies would agree to a price, and inevitably some jerk would drop their price. And you know what happens then? They suck in all the competition from all the customers from their competition. And you know what happens then is that everybody else has to drop their prices too. This is how price-fixing cabals go away. We as lawyers don't have price-fixing cabals, but we've historically had an hourly billing cabal. But once law firms figure out that, wait, if I go to flat fee, I'm going to make way more money, they steal all the competition, all the customers from the competition, all the clients from the competition. And of course, everybody has to fall in line. This seems inevitable. So the question is, do you want to be law firm number 1? Or do you want to be law firm number 20 that doesn't know why the phone stopped ringing? And blaming the economy, blaming, this client had a sweetheart deal with the other firm, but they won't know because the clients will never tell you that it's no, because you didn't get with the system. You're not doing flat fees. So we didn't hire you. So 3 potential worlds based on 2022 productivity. In the old world, 2022, you'd hire a whole workforce. They'd work 40 hours a week and get 22 levels of productivity, but those days are gone. I know coders, and you might know some people that have 3 full-time jobs. And the reason for that is because they use large language models to be able to automate their work. And they can then provide 40 hours a week worth of productivity, even though they only spend a fraction of that time working. Though that's not going to last long. You can imagine that instead, the employer is going to say, no, you're going to work 40 hours for me, and I am going to reap the benefit of those productivity gains. Thank you very much. That's one way. Or we could just fire a whole bunch of people and then require the people that stay there to work 40 hours a week, and then the employer still realizes more modest gains and says to the shareholders and the clients, look, I decreased my cost, I increased my productivity. This is a don't ask, don't tell world. I don't know if this is going to last very long. This is a world of abundance, where we can actually make way more money than we ever have in the past. And this is a world of scarcity, where a bunch of people get fired. Depending on the day, I vacillate between scarcity and abundance. I don't know which one we're going to end at, and I think nobody else does. But these days, I'm heartened for abundance. And one of the reasons is for corporate headcount. If you're a corporation, if you're a senior vice president, your power within the organization is determined on how many people you have underneath you. That is, somebody with 100 people underneath them has more power than somebody with 10 people underneath them. So maybe I'm incentivized as senior vice president to keep all those humans and to increase my productivity gains. That's one thing that heartens me. Another is that Peter Deng, who formerly led ChatGPT's product, said he thinks companies are going to get smaller, and I think he's right. Because he said, right now we have a lot of 10,000-person organizations that you need all these people to make the world run, but why wouldn't somebody just quit that company and create their own solo small shop? And then 2 of them, with their large language model agents underneath them, can do equivalent work. Of course, law firms are businesses. So you can imagine mega law firms. You have to pay for Manhattan real estate. You have to do this. Why wouldn't somebody jump and create a solo small and then be able to use large language models to do the work of the biggest law firms in the world in the ways that I've just showed you over the last hour? This is a bunch of law firms being surveyed by Lexis, I think, and said only 9% said that the clients are asking their bills to be reduced, but the corporations were asked the same question and said, yeah, 80% said, yeah, we want our bills to be reduced, right? There's a massive disconnect between what the law firms think are happening and what corporations think are happening. And I think that's a massive opportunity for everyone sitting in this room. If all the firms are thinking this, you can eat their lunch. You could be the law firm on the left-hand side and not the law firm on the right-hand side, which is reflected in this graph. Scarcity mindset, AI is a tsunami. And we can run in front of that tsunami for a while, but pretty soon it's going to crash over everybody. That's a scarcity mindset. But I think we're in a world of abundance. I think we're going to make way more money. And the reason for that is because of something that you know the concept, even if you don't know the name, and that's called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is that if you give yourself a month to do something, it's going to take you a month. If you then shrink that to 2 weeks, it's going to take you 2 weeks. So this is the idea that work expands or contracts depending on the time allotted. This is at play with AI. This is my friend Darth. He works in-house for Ford. And he said, do you realize how much I'm being regulated right now and how much work I'm not giving you because you lawyers are so expensive? He said, what's going to happen is I have plenty of work. You're going to use a large language model. If you don't, you're fired. And now that you've now shrunk your unit cost, I'm going to give you way more work. I'm going to give you all this regulatory work that I didn't give you before because now you've shrunk your unit cost. This is what's called Jevons paradox. Jevons paradox is the reason that we thought LED light bulbs were going to save us a lot of energy. Well, what do? It's so cheap, we just leave them on all the time. Right? It's too cheap to measure. So what if legal work were too cheap to measure? What if, every time I call my lawyer, the client says, it cost me $1,000, I'll just make do. Right? What if that $1,000 wasn't $1,000, but instead $100? Of course I'm going to call my lawyer, right? And I'll probably call my lawyer 10, 15, 20 times. So I've now shrunk the unit cost, but actually given the lawyer more of my money. That's Jevons paradox. And that aligns with something that in 1980 we had amazing AI. You know what that amazing AI was in 1980? It's called the spreadsheet. And you know what that amazing AI, who it freaked out? All the accountants that took about a week to do things like this. They said, man, this AI takes a week's worth of work, shrinks it down to a minute. The AI is going to eat all of our jobs. But you know what happened is when the clients figured out, wait, it's not going to take a week to do this, but it actually takes an hour, they asked question number 2. Say, run scenario 2, run scenario 5, run scenario 100. And today we have more accountants than we ever have, not in spite of the spreadsheet, but because of the spreadsheet. Because it's shrunk the unit cost of this ledger, which means that the clients wanted more of this. This is how maybe lawyers make more money. You shrink the unit cost and serve that 92% of legal needs that is unmet because we lawyers are too expensive. What if you shrink that cost and make it up in volume? That 92% is what economists would call a latent market, just waiting to be exploited in the best of ways. So wouldn't it be great if you could be able to dig into that latent market? And our current, I don't know how many billions of dollars the current legal market is, but imagine 2x or 3x or 5x or 10x that if we expand that latent market. We might be in a world of abundance. I hope we are. This is probably in 5 minutes left. I said I'd leave about 5 minutes for questions. If there are no questions, I can keep going with my thing, but it looks like we have a few.
I'm sure we have questions. I have like 200 questions. So first of all, everyone, can we give a round of applause for Damien?
Thank you very much. My question's about compliance with an attorney's ethical obligations, with the rules of professional responsibility and the use of AI. When a lawyer is considering a particular application, what questions should he or she be asking to ensure that the prompts and the responses and the reprompts and the back and forth continues to be protected as a confidential attorney work product?
Sure.
And yeah.
So one of those is that who do you trust? You have to trust, if you send an email from you to me, do you trust Microsoft or Gmail to keep that confidential? So the real question is, who has access to that data, and do you trust those people, right? So really the question is, do you trust VLEX when we say that we will never ever train on your data? And then do you also trust that we at VLEX have agreements with OpenAI and Anthropic that they will never ever train on your data? And then if those things are true, then maybe there's not as much a confidentiality problem as you think. Any more than sending an email is not a confidentiality problem. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is that that's option one, is to use a tool like ours. Option two is to use ChatGPT out of the box. And if you read the terms of service of that, the question is, do you trust that large language model, like ChatGPT or others? Do you trust them to not train on your data? And that might be a different calculation into this.
So it's all about the training. Is the application going to train on the data that you submit?
So the question is the application going to train on the data that you submit? And I would say that VLEX will not be training on your data. OpenAI will not be training on the data that you provide to VLEX. But the question is, large language model X, whatever that happens to be, you can imagine, are they going to train? Maybe, maybe not, right? Often there's a joke that if you're not paying for a product, you are not the user, you're the product itself. So there's a real question, do you use a fit-for-purpose tool or do you not? Other questions? We're going to get exercise for Eric.
So I love the idea of flat fee agreements. I think a lot of people find that very attractive. We recently got guidance from the ABA that may, throw that into question when they say you can't bill for things that you haven't, billed hourly for. What do you say to that?
I would say that they should look at this tool and the 200 pages that it puts out and say that should I not, as a lawyer, be able to reap the gains of using a tool like this? What does the ABA want to incentivize? You show me the incentives, I'll show the outcome. Does the ABA want to incentivize hourly billing? Then they should keep that advisory being the same. Because if I take these 200 hours and shrink it down to 5 minutes, maybe I'm not incentivized to do this. Maybe I'm incentivized just to stay in the hourly billing because the ABA says it's fine. So I'd say, number one, what is the ABA trying to incentivize? If they want to incentivize flat fees, they probably took the wrong approach. And thing number two is, of course, the ABA, you said, is an advisory opinion, which is true. States can adopt or not adopt that advisory opinion. So I would say that if you're a forward-thinking, in the bar of a forward-thinking state, maybe you adopt a lot of what the ABA says, but maybe that portion of it, say, no, we'll let the lawyers figure out how they can best make money. And Joshua Lennon just said in here, you can imagine clients saying, if that thing takes way less time, I'm going to spend way more money. It's more valuable to me to be able to spend, if I get the turnaround in 1 day rather than a week. I'll pay more for that 1 day than a week. A good example of that is Baker McKenzie, one of the biggest law firms in the world. There's a person working for Danielle Beneke said they do cybersecurity work. And in cybersecurity, which I did as well, if you take a week to do things, that sucks. Because then you're under the world scrutiny to say what's going to happen. They say they took this 1 week turnaround time and shrunk it to 15 minutes. And so the question for the ABA is now I've shrunk this 1 week to 15 minutes, can I not charge more for this? Because now it's 15 minutes, I can on day 0 tell the client, here's everything you should do on this. Is that not providing way more value than that 1 week's worth of things? So I think the ABA should reassess that position. We have 1 minute left.
All right, we've got time for one more. If you're in the back there, can you come forward just for...
Meeting in the middle.
I can run, but...
We're compromising.
You guys should speak right into
Oh, perfect. Hello.
Yeah.
So I asked this as a current law student. You talk about trust but verify. So it seems that, at least for now, these tools need a competent attorney to check to see if they're giving a good response. If associates don't get experience by doing the legwork themselves, how do you envision that we'll get sufficient legal knowledge to be able to assess the AI response?
I love that question. That's my favorite, and it's a really good one to end on. I started law school in 1999. When I started in 1999, the librarian said, do not trust Westlaw, because there were errors in Westlaw. The source of truth is the books. So if you want to be able to get the source of truth, go to the stacks. I spent a lot of time running to the stacks. Did that make me a better lawyer? No, it just friggin' wasted my time, right? So the real question is, if I can ask this question about trade secret law regarding former employees, and if Vincent can read through hundreds of cases, land on the 29 that are above this 70% threshold, and give you these 29 cases, then is not reading the 80% making you a better lawyer? No, it's just wasting your time if you read those 80 other cases. So the real question is, how much of the work that we're doing now that we have tools like this, how much of it is running to the stacks? That's not making you a better lawyer. What's making you a better lawyer is talking to the clients, being able to say to the clients, talking them off the ledge, saying, you don't really want to sue over this. It's building trust between clients, and that's what associates should be doing. They shouldn't be reading the 80 cases that don't relate to the thing that I want to do. It should be building the human relationships. Because in the end, as large language models are able to do more and more of our work, all that's left is our relationships. Are you a rainmaker? Do your clients trust you? Are they somebody that you want to be able to have out to their kid's birthday party? The humanity is going to elevate above all else as the large language models do more and more of that work. So I would say as an associate, learn how to have human skills. Learn how to be able to be a personable person, that you can be a rainmaker, because really that will be all that's left. And with that, thank you very much for your time and attention.